Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 3650. Today's date is October 19, 2025. It's been almost like morning at 8:42 a.m. Alright, let's just jump into the question. Okay, let's go. Alright, the question is, what if Roman Empire expanded to Asia? Alright, really good question by the way. Alright, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality and try to create that reality according to the knowledge that you have. I don't know, I just like to give the answer because it kind of like a something I just understand how much knowledge do I have regarding about particular stuff and things like that. Disclaimer, the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's just my opinion. It's not like it's raw, it's unfiltered, it's unverified. So be advised, don't take this information very seriously or no. If you want this information, go to the internet, seek for this information, you will get the verified and right information. I'm just giving here my opinion. Alright? Okay? Now everyone knows everything what they should supposed to be know. Alright? Let's go, let's proceed. Alright, so what if Roman Empire expanded to Asia? First of all, is that I belong to India by the way. Okay, yeah. And I have very less information regarding about the European civilization like a Roman and kind of like a Persian and things like that. Okay, yeah, because in my history books, most of the kind of like history is actually taught by Indian history, and Indian history is actually far more richer. Okay, yeah. So I'm not really knew that much amount of Rome, but still I'm trying to explain as much as better. Okay, yeah. So first of all is that this is kind of like a story is actually almost like maybe 1,000 year ago probably, or maybe more than 1,000 year ago. Okay, like before the Jesus maybe. Okay, yeah. So Roman are kind of like a somebody basically is this thing that Rome that presented today is actually exist in Italy, okay, and as well as kind of like a somebody the southern part of the Europe are actually exist Europe. Okay, yeah. At that time, the Roman boundary is actually conquer the entire Italy, as well as little bit part of Turkey and like maybe little bit of North Europe, but not really that much. Okay, yeah. I'm not really sure how much the boundary was the Roman Empire, but probably one thing for sure is that Italy and Turkey is actually kind of like a conquered by the Roman. Probably, I'm okay, yeah. Because if I'm gonna say mention the Turkey, then Turkey is a kind of like a bit different because at that time, the Roman Empire still as well as the Persian Empire was actually exist. Okay, at that time, which is actually conquered by the Middle East. Okay, like Iraq, Iran. Okay, no, modern day Iraq, Iran is kind of like a something situated Persian Empire too. Okay, and it's like basically is this thing that European Empire is, yeah, they are really powerful. Like it's not really that they are not really powerful. Like one of the really biggest thing that advantage in the Roman Empire is that they knowledge and they have discipline regarding about the battlefield, like how they should supposed to be battlefield. It was really the way that they coordinated regarding about the battlefield, like a synchronization, battlefield strategies and things like that. It was really good. Okay, yeah. But the Persian Empire are kind of like a bit really cruel. Okay, yeah. Yeah, they don't really have any kind of like a battlefield experience and strategies regarding about that. But they just know only one thing. This is the enemy, you have to kill the enemy. That's it. The way that you wanted to do, just do it by yourself. And they are very cruel regarding about the way that they do and things like that. Okay, yeah. Like it is that. Okay, so basically is this thing, if I'm trying to imagine that if the kind of like a some Roman Empire will kind of like a somebody expanded towards Asia, like India or China, possibly it's not gonna possible. Okay, yeah, because in every possible way I'm kind of like seeing that it's not possible because like basically let me tell you one thing. Okay, yeah, the Alexander the Great, who kind of like tried to conquer almost like an entire kind of like a somebody European and Asian continent. Okay, yeah. But after he do that thing, he doesn't really conquer that particular land. Okay, yeah, because let me tell you one thing now, like a basically Alexander is actually die at the age of 32. Okay, yeah, he was very early, he died. Okay, because of some sort of disease. And another thing is that ki after he kind of like a conquer that particular kind of like a something empire or things like that, he let that empire to do his own, but kind of like a somebody the Alexander kind of like a somebody control over him. Okay, yeah, but still it's not possible. It's like that na ki what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki yes, Alexander is try to conquer the kind of like a kind of like somebody most of the kind of like something Asian empire, but he doesn't really cross Sindhu Valley civilization. Okay, like Indian civilization or Indian kind of like empire, he cannot conquer that because at the time Indian empire is kind of like a way much stronger and way much kind of like a highly equipped with the kind of like a warrior and things like that. And the same thing with the China too, but still China is actually a bit more far away than India. Okay, yeah, and as also there is so much mountain range and things like that, so it's not gonna possible that much. Okay, yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that even if the Alexander is kind of like put all the effort and things like that, he's all the effort went to failure. Okay, yeah, yeah. We knew that Alexander is kind of like a conquer most of the land in Asia and things like that, but their culture is not actually that much present in Asia or any kind of like a Middle East or things like that. It's just like basically what I'm trying to tell you is this thing. I'm not really sure about the information that I'm trying to tell you. I'm just kind of like giving my opinion. Okay, what I know at the moment, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing na ki when you try to conquer the more and more land, you will have less and less control. Okay, this is what kind of like basically just in that ki when you have a land kind of like a small, but you can control everything. Okay, yeah. But when you have kind of like an empire of very big land and things and that, you might have little less control, and less control would kind of like create another empire in its own empire. Okay, so that is like a yeah. All right, so probably in this today's world, like we are living in kind of like a 2025, and we are kind of like a we have so many kind of like a bigger government. Okay, like we have Russia is kind of like a very big land and things like that. But let me tell you one thing. Okay, yeah, the bigger country doesn't mean that it kind of like a somebody. Yeah, it's what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that Russia is not really habitat for kind of like a human civilization should supposed to be live there. Okay, yeah, like most of the almost like a 99. I'm not really sure, but probably is this thing. Most of the kind of like a somebody Russian people actually live in kind of like a Moscow and kind of like a something that west part of the Russia. Okay, east part of Asia, and some of the people actually live in kind of like a little bit east part of Asia too. The middle plateau of Russia is kind of like covered by the Siberia, and Siberia is kind of like a full of cold, legit cold. Okay, yeah, and existence of human civilization over there is far more less, legitly far more less. So yes, in kind of like a some documented point of perspective, Russia is kind of like a very big country, but Russia is not actually kind of like control all of them, because there is no people over there. Okay, like some people actually almost like maybe 60 to 70% people actually live in kind of like a Moscow and that kind of like a west part of the region, and some of the people actually live in the west part of the region. The central part of the Russia is kind of like a bit more vanded. Like there are very less people actually exist. Also, the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right. It's just my giving my opinion. Okay, I'm just thinking that probably it might gonna true. All right, yeah. So first thing you have to understand: the bigger empire, the lesser it control. So you have to be understood that stuff. All right. So jump back to the question. The question says that what if the Roman kind of like a empire is kind of like somebody expanded towards India and things like that? Well, the first problem that I mentioned, bigger land cannot able to control. Another thing is that there are multiples of empire over there. Persian Empire, then lot of kind of like somebody like the Indian continent, they have kind of like a multiples of empire too. Okay, and it is like and they are really equally kind of like somebody powerful. It's not really that the Roman Empire have like a really powerful army and things like that. No, they are really good at battlefield, but still the battlefield is actually win by the how much number of the soldier, and still Roman have kind of like a, yeah, like they have soldier, but still it's not really that big soldier as compared to kind of like somebody the Persian Empire and kind of like somebody Indian Empire. They are like a kind of like somebody called as a kind of like somebody equal. One of the really good thing about the Rome is that their knowledge. Okay, yeah, the architecture, the way that they kind of like a thing, the mathematics, it was something really far ahead. Okay, far ahead from the another empire. Okay, yeah, like basically, let me tell you one thing. In India, most of people actually follow the kind of like a god and rituals and things like that. Okay, yeah. So we are kind of like a bit more busy on this culture and things like that. Same thing goes with the Persia too. Okay, they are kind of like a bit really focused on kind of like a some afterlife and kind of like a, all those things they are believing that. But the Rome is a kind of like a country where kind of like some people are kind of like a free more country. Like basically this thing, Rome is Rome or Athens. Okay, probably I'm not really sure about that. Like Athens is a kind of like a first city state. Okay, yeah, is became a first democrat country probably. Like basically, what's a democrat country? A democrat country means like that ki people have opinion that what kind of like a somebody like a basically the like a, the that umpire is actually run by the people's opinion. Okay, yeah. And this is what kind of like this thought process actually came in the Rome, specifically in Athens. Probably, I'm not really sure. Athens is a part of the Rome. Yeah, probably. But by the way, Athens is a kind of like some island country. It's not just like a Greece. Like Athens is a part of Greece. Now it's not supposed to be Rome. Yeah. What is actually Rome? Like Italy? Italy was part of the Rome. That is for sure. The Greece is part of the Rome. I'm not really sure. Okay, yeah. I just still literally focus. I'm still don't really know about the how much kind of like a boundary that Roman Empire has. Okay, yeah. Like basically in our entire history, Roman Empire is not actually kind of like a somebody remember by how much strength they had. They have no. They kind of like somebody remember by how much kind of like somebody information that they have. Architecture or kind of like assembly information, the mathematics, the Aristotle, the Galileo, and things like that. Those are people are kind of like assembly legendary. By the way, I'm not really sure about the Galileo is actually from Roman or not. Okay, yeah, but still, is this thing that Roman are kind of like assembly remember by the information that they have, the knowledge that they have, and kind of like city plannings and kind of like architecture that they have was really good, really great, and democrat. Okay, like basically the way that kind of like people are kind of like considered as a republic country, and it was really good. The value that the Roman kind of like a civilization give us to the world is kind of like a really good. As okay, so most of the kind of like people are kind of like remember by kind of like value that they give, like information and things like that. People doesn't really know that how much big empire and big kind of like somebody is this thing. It's not, people don't really remember that much. Okay, yeah. But still, for hypothetical scenario, let's just imagine that the Roman Empire is kind of like expanded towards the India and kind of like China. Like basically, if it conquer the almost like entire Asia, then what would be that world? Well, if they do that thing, it was really good. Okay, like basically, I don't know how they do that thing. Like basically, as I mentioned, big land means less control, so they have to make sure that they have very big control and things like that. Okay, let me tell you one thing. Okay, if you wanted to control people, okay, yeah, you need two ways. Okay, yeah, like there are kind of like two possible ways that you could control the people. Okay, yeah. First of all, religion. Okay, I'm trying to tell you from ancient point of perspective. In today's world, things are very different. Okay, yeah. In ancient point of perspective, you have only two ways. First of all, religious. Okay, yeah. If you connect their religion to our religion, so people will gonna connect and people will consider that ki ha, this is the one method. This is the way that you could control. Okay, yeah. And another thing is that ki consider them, you are the god. Okay, means you are the really higher authority. Okay, yeah. If you succeed in this particular process, like if you succeed that a religious context or kind of like somebody consider as yourself god, or there is also another way is that he destroy everything what they believe and kind of like somebody set a new rule that what they should supposed to believe. Okay, this is also third way. It's very hard to understand, but let me give you the context. Okay, let me give you understand so that you might gonna understand. Okay, yeah. All right. You are the person that you wanted to conquer the 100 people. Okay, there is 100 people in front of you. Okay, yeah. Now those 100 people, some of the people, like let's just say 10 people actually following this culture, the 10 people actually following this religions and things and that and that and that. Okay, yeah. Now you have a strength might be bigger than all of those 100 people. Okay, yeah. So you have a strength and you actually conquered them, and you actually conquered. Yeah, you actually conquered. It's not really that much like with the strength you actually conquered them. Okay, yeah. But the unity will not gonna establish. Those people will always kind of like a think that you are the kind of the conqueror and you are the person who just not really good person. Like you are kind of like considered as a evil from their point of perspective. Okay, yeah. Yeah, from force point of perspective, like basically you are applying the force, people might gonna follow, that is okay. But kind of like somebody from intentionally they will not gonna follow, they kind of like hate you and things like that. And suddenly something you have kind of like a little less control on your kind of like assembly, the little less control on those 100 people, those people will kind of like assembly try to coup you or try to kind of like assembly exchange, or they just wanted to kind of like assembly, like basically they will consider that they are kind of like somebody in kind of like some sort of kind of like somebody claustrophobic environment, they are kind of like somebody bounded towards you and things like that, and they want freedom. Okay, yeah. And when you have little less control, they seek for the freedom and they will get the freedom. So what I'm trying to tell you, from your strength you can conquer those people, but you cannot control those people, or you cannot kind of like assembly. No, it's nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. Because let me tell you one thing, if you really wanted to understand people and if you really wanted to kind of like conquer them or control them, you need to set your boundaries. You need to understand that what you can do, what you can't do, and as also is this thing, you have to understand the accept of change. Okay, yeah. There is no stable thing in this universe. You have to be kind of like accept that there is a kind of like somebody world might be kind of like a change with thought process and everything, and you have to be accept that thing. What you have to do is that if you wanted to control, what should you supposed to do is that, like I'm trying to tell you a kind of like old method way, destroy their religion. If like basically is this thing, if they are not listening to me, then probably is this thing I should supposed to be kind of like a destroy that what they believe, and they believe their gods means religious, so basically I should supposed to be destroy their religious. But by the way, this does not really work. Okay, yeah. If you destroy their religion, their kind of like a strong between religions is even more stronger. So it was not gonna kind of like something happen. But still, at that time, if you do this thing, this is the kind of like a way that you could do that. But because at that time people are not really that much educated and things like that and stuff like that. So yeah, but still is this thing that you cannot control those 100 people. Okay, yeah. What like okay, let me give you the context. Okay, yeah. If you wanted to control the people, or kind of like so much amount of people and things like that, what do you have to do? What kind of like things? You have to provide value. Okay, you have to provide value to them. Okay, yeah. What value? A value means such a value that it matter to them. It kind of like somebody adds something significant value in their life, a knowledge, or kind of like somebody had a chance for good life or things like that. Okay, yeah. One thing. Another thing is that whoever you are, okay, yeah, it depends on how much that you face in the past. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing now, people might not gonna like, you cannot control the people unless you kind of like somebody born from kind of like a very harsh environment, and then you kind of like learn and things like that. Okay, yeah. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, your life should supposed to be a progress story. Is not a kind of like something is this thing, you are already a kind of like a prince and then you are, no, people might not gonna follow and things like that. Okay, by the way, it's also applicable in the modern world too. Okay, yeah. That if you wanted to control the people, okay, yeah, make sure you are providing such a value that it matter to them, first thing. Another thing is that your backstory, who are you, what you are, what kind of like some problem that you face, and what kind of like a challenges that you face. This is the second factor. Third factor is the influence, that what is exactly that you could do with the knowledge that you get in the past, or the kind of like and what kind of like add value to the people and things like that. Okay, this is the third thing, that is called influence. Okay, yeah. and your personality too. Okay, regarding about the way that you interact with the people, way that you kind of like handle the situation and figure it out the solution throughout the problem and things like that, with kind of like a little less harm and kind of like simply using your brain power to kind of like solving the things and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, these are the four method that you could apply to control the people. First method, provide the value. Second method, your backstory should supposed to be good. Third method is that he kind of like a simply way that you do it matter to them and it kind of like a matter to them in the future too. Fourth is a influence. Okay, your personality or things like that. How do you kind of like simply present and this like this is the way that you could do. Huh? In this four method, I am not kind of like a include any kind of like a simply kind of like a simply a force way to kind of like a control the people. Okay, yeah, yeah. There is also another way that you could kind of like a force people to control. Okay, yeah, but you shouldn't supposed to do that thing because it's not really good. Okay, yeah, yeah. You apply force, they will gonna follow for a couple of period of time, but not the rest of the lifetime. Nothing really at all. So it is really essential to not to apply force. Let them decide. Let them decide what they want in their life, and kind of like they will gonna choose. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is. It is what. Okay, yeah. So this is the way that you could control the people. Now, this is the kind of like a some method that might kind of like a somebody work in the modern world too, and in the future too. Okay, yeah. But in the past, they don't know that kind of like a somebody the information that how they should supposed to control and things like that. Okay, yeah. Dude, what is exactly point that you wanted to tell you? Like, I don't know, sometimes I just kind of like way beyond the kind of like topic to talk and stuff like that. Okay, but still is this thing now ki what I'm trying to tell you is this: Roman people are kind of like a far more different regarding about the Asian people and kind of like Indian people and kind of like a Middle East people and kind of like it's far more difference regarding about color, creed, caste and kind of like some the language and everything. Okay, yeah. So there is no match. There is no like basically even if you have power to conquer them, still those people will not gonna control and things like that. But still, the hypothetical scenario that ki Roman Empire is kind of like something expanded towards the India and China, kind of like China, then what would be that world? Global trade focus on kind of like assembly Rome probably. Okay, Silk Road is a kind of like a diverted towards the Rome. Okay, yeah, like basically we have Silk Road. In the Silk Road, the most of the trading is actually happened, and in this particular situation, the trading is kind of like a bit more focused on kind of like assembly European empire like a Britain and kind of like a Portuguese and Spanish and things like that. But if the kind of like somebody the Roman have control over things, so most of the kind of like trade routes actually happen from China to Rome with the India and Middle East and things like that. So basically it's this thing they would have a lot of kind of like a valuable material like silk, gold and things and that and that. It was like a really good. Okay, they have a lot of amount of money, they have a lot of amount of powers and things and that. Okay, yeah. Another thing is that another thing is like a like a artist not artistic like what is actually word for kind of like a sort of building shape. I just mentioned. Okay, what is at least archaeologists no what is actually word. Okay, wait what is exactly is this thing? I just knew that word. Wait building shape called BYLD building shape of different region on planet called what? Archaeologist? No, archaeologist nahi. No. What is actually word for? No. Design shape, the place worship is archaeologist. Yeah, the building architecture. Yeah, architecture. Yeah, this is the word that I'm looking for. Architecture. Yes. So if the Roman has kind of like assembly expanded towards the kind of like India and China and things like that, so their architecture is kind of like a bit more different. Okay, yeah. If you kind of like consider the Roman architecture, so basically you are kind of like imagine as a kind of like a simply roof with a lot of pillars and things like that. Oh yeah. Indian architecture are kind of like simply gummat. Okay, yeah, like basically they have kind of like a round shape at the top and kind of like things like that. Okay, yeah. A Chinese architecture is kind of like a bit more different, like the rooftop which kind of like a slanted towards kind of like a simply a curve and things like that. Like basically you just kind of like when you see it, you kind of like understand what is really Chinese architecture and kind of like Indian architecture. So basically it's this thing, the when the Roman Empire is kind of like expanded towards the kind of like India and China and things like that. So architecture kind of like a mix with multiple buildings and stuff like that. Okay, one thing. Another thing is that ki religion. Okay, yeah. Roman is kind of like a bit more followers of Christianity and things like that. So basically it's this thing that ki if the Roman is kind of like somebody expanded towards Asia, then probably they have mixture of kind of like a not only as a Christian but as well as kind of like a Hindus, Buddhist, and as well as the Chinese and as well as Islam too. Okay, yeah. But still, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that might be if they wanted to do this thing, if they wanted to control that big land, they would kind of like somebody that destroy the religious practice, like they would gonna destroy the kind of like somebody Islamic, or they would kind of like destroy the kind of like Hinduism, they would kind of like destroy the Buddhism and things like that. Okay, because they wanted to control, and basically different kind of people they might not gonna control because they have different belief in things like that. So Roman kind of like people will kind of like simply destroy their beliefs, and belief means religion and kind of like their religions and kind of like their statues and temples and things and that stuff like that. Probably. Okay, yeah, they might be happen, might not happen, I'm not really sure. Oh yeah. Another thing is that mathematics, dude, this was kind of like a really good thing. Like if the Roman Empire is kind of like a conquer the rest of the Asia and things like that, one thing I'm gonna do is that they kind of like share their knowledge regarding about what they accumulated, like a mathematics, algebra, then astrophysics, and these are kind of like shared to the rest of the world, specifically in India and specifically in China too. Like people are kind of like a bit more aware of this situation, and probably it will kind of like add so much value, as well as kind of like a mathematics in zero is actually came from the Aryabhatta from India, which is also a bit more shared to the rest of the world and things like that, which is really good too. Okay, yeah. In battlefield it was also really good. Okay, yeah. Probably is this thing that we are actually started sailing almost like a maybe 1,000 years ago, but if the Roman Empire kind of like conquered the world, then probably they are really bitterly forced to kind of like only focus on develop this technology as a sailing. Okay, yeah. So probably this is they are bitterly focused regarding about how they should supposed to make a kind of like a boat that they would kind of like cross the kind of like Europe to kind of like Asia. They are kind of like finding a trade route and things like that. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that the trade route that we found might be kind of like if the Roman Empire is kind of like expanded towards Asia and things like that, so they might kind of like found the trade route way earlier ago. Okay, because they wanted to kind of like bypass this kind of like a Silk Route, because let me tell you one thing, Silk Route is not really efficient way to kind of like a transition and things like that, because there might be kind of like stolen and things like that. So probably is this thing, it was not going to possible. So it is really essential to control them. For them, they have to find the sea route and trade route. Okay. Another thing is that Suez Canal. Okay, so basically is this thing that the Suez Canal is actually kind of like established in probably 200 years ago, maybe 100 years ago. I'm not really sure about that, but probably is this thing they wanted to, if they wanted to control and things like that, they have to bypass the entire Africa, and probably they don't want that because Africa is actually very big country for sailing and things like that. So they need a kind of like a shipment that kind of like across the Mediterranean Sea to kind of like connect into Arabian Sea. So there is only one way to kind of like the Suez Canal. So probably is this thing they might gonna create the Suez Canal way early ago. Okay, yeah. So it was kind of like a really easy to kind of conquer the interest of the Asia and things like that, which is really good. As well as if they kind of like build that kind of like some sea trade route, so it is really essential for them to understand every possible way regarding about how they supposed to sailing and things like that. So not only they will conquer the kind of like the Asia, because of they have kind of like a very powerful military and forces and kind of like money and things like that, they might gonna control the rest of the Africa too, because they have a lot of money and things like that, because all the money actually came from there. Okay, as well as they are kind of like surrounded towards the European too, like a Britain Empire or a Portuguese Empire or Spanish Empire, and they will kind of like expand their boundaries even much bigger. Okay, yeah, they will not gonna cross the kind of like a Russian Empire, because let me tell you one thing, the Russia is kind of like a bit more far, very far away. Because let me tell you one thing, the Roman Empire is actually established in kind of like South Europe, and probably if they wanted to control the Russia, then they would kind of like control the Genghis Khan and things like that. It was kind of like a really difficult to them, because Genghis Khan a bit more violent and a bit more cruel and things like that. Okay, so from every possible perspective, if they wanted to do this thing, it was kind of like a really beautiful scenario that it was gonna happen. But still, it is, dude, I kind of like a talk really fast. I don't know why. I just like when I was kind of like in the zone, I just like I talk. Okay, but still, is this thing after all like how much possibility that kind of how much do you believe that ki Roman Empire could kind of like simply conquer the rest of the Asian things like that? Give me the percentage. Probably less than 50%. Okay, yeah, they might gonna conquer maybe kind of like simply Africa or maybe kind of like simply Middle East part, but still in front of Persian Empire and in front of Indian Empire, they are not really like both are actually kind of like equally stronger and things like that. So it is not really kind of like simply easier for them to conquer the rest of the stuff and things like that. Whatever, it's just my opinion, things like that. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah. Another thing, do not seek this information very correct way. I'm just trying to giving you kind of like just my opinion, things like that. Okay, yeah. My opinion is not exactly right, it's not exactly wrong either. So don't seek this information very correctly. Okay, if you need information, you need to go to the internet, you will get the entire information regarding about that. Okay, I'm just giving my opinion. Alright, everything is good, great. Thank you.